folks. If anyone's listening, starting shortly. Don't know who this bloke is, but I tell you what, he can fucking mix. How's that? That better? Caddis, I can see on YouTube there. You should be able to hear me okay now. Test this. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. So I'm just working on a little laptop screen here, so I can't really see what I'm doing too well to repeat my spiel. Going out live on YouTube and X for those joining late. As usual, just having a bunch of different tech glitches here. I'm working off a laptop. Cheers, thanks man, appreciate that. So I'm working with vMix here and a couple of laptops, just kind of cobbled together the old setup. Usually when I used to do this crack, I'd have like a big huge monster desktop computer with TVs coming out my arse, 4 or 5 screens or whatever. Just got a couple of laptops here. So thanks for joining, folks. Thanks whoever's watching back late. This is Emmet, the host of the Resolving Reality podcast and the author of Red Pandemic, the Global Marxist Cult. That's the first time I got that right. I keep getting the fucking name wrong. I'm just going to riff about a couple of things tonight, nothing too serious. And just comment on a couple of things. Gone out live on X and YouTube. Anyone listening in on X or watching on X, if you want to comment, best to do that on YouTube. So I can't really see the comments on X too easily. It's kind of a little bit annoying. Just cobbled together a setup here, no lights, and my little bits and pieces. It was my first setup, our first stream on Irish soil. It's been quite a while. Just back recently after a long stint abroad. Haven't been here since probably October 23, so thereabouts. Yeah, I think so, about that. So still just adjusting to this poxy cold weather as well. That's taken a while to get used to. So I hope everyone's doing well. As usual, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just riff about a bunch of things, probably like go for an hour and a half, something like that, whatever, till dinner calls me, and then fucking fly. Fuck off. Not you. Fly. Bastard. I'll riff about a few things, probably do like an hour thereabouts. And then as usual, I'm going to just chop that up into bits and put that out into X and so on. Just press record there. I almost forgot to record the stream. Last time I streamed, and it was everything was pretty good, but then I had to download the stream from YouTube, which is only like 720p. It's shit quality, and then use that to send the clips out online and so on. But this time recorded it in full HD, so it's brilliant. I almost forgot. Can't believe this is actually working. The laptop should have exploded by now, but we're still going. It's all that matters. Anyone listening on X, please do post or retweet. I think quote post, fly bastard. Fuck off. I think quote posts or quote reposts work the best apparently. My American friends would tell me about that. If you kind of repost the tweet, it's pretty good. If you quote post it, that's even better. It helps you get more traction with the algorithm or some bullshit like that. Don't really understand it myself. And anyone wants to comment, fire comments through on YouTube. So just like last day when I did that last stream from Spain, what I did was I had my little running order, which you can see on my screen here. I'll riff about a few different things, but if people want to comment on YouTube or fire in questions, I'll try and get to those or squeeze them in later. We'll do it that way, so I'm not constantly going back and forth. Thank God for you, Caddis. I would have kept waffling there for ages without the mic switched on. Appreciate that. Yeah, but it's all good. And anyone joining, fire away suggestions for kind of topics and stuff later. I've got a few things I want to riff about. Probably not as structured as last time. Last time I wanted to rant and get stuff off my chest, particular things off my chest, but not so this time really. So I hope everyone's good, enjoying the new year so far. Much work to be done, and the struggle continues and all. I'll fade that out a little bit. Where am I? I need to sort out different music, because that's like, it's my mix, it's my DJ mix, but it's not my music obviously, and you always get flagged for like copyright material and shit like that. Just making sure I'm still going out on YouTube and X, all good. Yeah, I can see there now. So don't worry, anyone watching or listening, just didn't like to go nice and slow at the start. Then we'll be going like the clappers in a bit, I'm sure, once things start popping into my head. Right. So anyway, got a few plans as well being back out. Got a few things I'm probably going to work on, like setting up, getting a documentary done. I've kind of built up enough contacts now, and I have the technical know-how and the skills and shit to do a documentary, which I've always wanted to do. So I'll be probably traveling around interviewing some of the big guns over the next few months, and doing in-person interviews, gathering that good quality, video and audio. Doing stuff over the internet is grand, but it's great actually meeting people and having a couple of cameras set up, having a decent mics, getting good quality material, having an actual in-person conversation is better than doing it over the internet. I think, you can always get some real gold that way, and then turn it into a documentary. That's the plan. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. Also, speaking engagements as well. Like I've got a few people I've been talking to about doing potential, live presentations like the one I did in Dallas. By the way, anyone kind of watching back or just if you're joined and you're not familiar with my work, I highly recommend you watching the live presentation I did at the University of Dallas back in November, talking about Marxism in general, what's happening to the world, what's happening to Ireland, and my book. That's the quickest way to get used to my work. It's only like going to cost you 45 minutes of your life. I'd highly recommend it. Things start to make a lot more sense after you look at things through that anti-Marxist lens. But Grant, again, thanks for joining. Anyone's joining me late. Right, so I'll get into my little run order list here. Right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was the kind of situation with X and free speech and going on. Well, I kind of paid attention to that a little bit. I kind of predicted myself it was going to be always predictable, or what was I going to say? Par for the course when Musk started to align himself with Donald Trump and started to, align himself with kind of right wing or anti-Marxist stances in the States, that he was going to be targeted for smear campaigns and pressure and so on. And I did mention, and I think in a space recently, or maybe as an interview, that when you look at Musk, he's someone who doesn't have any political experience or background. And if I was looking to attack the system myself, Trump and his allies, Vance and so on, I would say that Musk is probably the weak link in terms of personality, in terms of, being able to handle pressure as a politician. The rest of them would be a bit more accustomed to that. I'm not saying he's a little snowflake, he's ran companies and so on, but you know what I mean? To me, like, there's an opportunity there definitely to weaken his resolve and to try to break him somehow. So that could be connected to what's happened. I don't know all the details. I heard that he was banning accounts. Now, immediately people start jumping to their defense and assuming that he did something unethical. But that may not necessarily be the case. It depends on what those accounts were doing. And I know full well, I think some of the gripers were banned. Nick Fuentes type crew. Now they have big fan bases and so on, but these people are Jew trappers. I've talked about them in a previous video, and from what I know of them, these people they call themselves ostensibly right wing, but they actually got lean into the whole National Socialist stuff, and also they want to talk about the Jews all the time, which I talked about in a previous video is actually counterproductive. And obviously in America, if you're going to take that stance and be, against Israel, against Trump, against and so on, and say that those things are bad, of course you're going to draw fire. I don't know exactly what they were up to. I'm not saying they should have been banned, but certainly I'm not going to lose sleep over people like that being banned. Now, as usual, I've talked about this before. People talk about free speech and so on, and they throw that up. So imagine if I'm causing trouble on a free speech platform and then I get reprimanded or punished somehow or banned, and then I'll turn around and say, what about my free speech? Well, I do agree with the idea of free speech. I've talked about this plenty of times, that I like the idea of free speech. It's a good thing, and the reason why we're all talking about it is because we've had to deal with these totalitarian types in the world over the last so many years, particularly since the 1800s and the rise of Marxism, that these people are totalitarian. They want to control the world. They tend to control people. And that's why we're all talking about freedom of speech. That's why you hear the hate speech bills and crimes and all this crack. And because you've got these totalitarian types trying to control our speech, that's why it's become kind of a buzzword, this kind of free speech thing constantly. But like with a lot of things, I think we should not just switch our intelligence off and repeat these things like parrots. We have to look at the details. And, obviously, as I talked about in my book and in the presentation, the Marxist camp, you just let me know if my mic's coming through loud enough. I'm a little bit paranoid it's not too... how's it going? Yeah, I saw your comment there on YouTube. Tea for everyone. Thank you. You just let me know if the mic is loud enough, right? Because I'm just, again, playing around some settings here. It should be loud enough. I just don't want it to clip. We just coming through too loud. I can't be too loud in this place where I am right now. That should be okay. I'm coming through at about like 80% on the meter. So just let me know on YouTube or on X if my mic is loud enough. But back to the free speech thing. So, like with a lot of things, we should never leave our intelligence at the door. We should always just analyze these things and never get into the habit of just repeating them like parrots. Now, of course, when you come at free speech with kind of an analytical stance like me, sometimes people will think that I'm against free speech and get a little bit freaked out and go, oh, he's a bit of totalitarian. That's not true. And unfortunately, where I'm coming from, it can draw that sort of response from people. All I'm just saying is that we be intelligent about it and understand that the ideas like free speech and freedom of expression, freedom to have your political stance, or to not be political, or to believe in a religion, or to be atheistic or whatever. These ideas are very old, and they're a lot older than Marxism, and the world has kind of changed. So I'm not saying we should ditch them, but we should upgrade our understanding of those things in the context of what's happening. So as I talk about my work, the Marxist camp, and that includes the National Socialists, because they're a derivative of Marxism, and the Jew trappers are often sympathetic with National Socialism. And so they're all kind of in the same ideology pretty much. They're just different strains of the same thing. And they like to cry oppression, because it's part of their DNA. They like to cry their oppression when their rights are being taken away, but yet they want to engage in destructive behavior at the same time. So this is an ethical an issue. And say if Musk was banning accounts and so on, because they're known troublemakers, or they have these National Socialist or Jew trapper tendencies, and they do get their accounts banned, good, as far as I'm concerned. Because they're toxic, just like I'd say the same thing about the outright Marxists. And while we're on that subject, with the looking at general discourse, and I am an X addict. I'm always on X, listening to discourse and so on. Mostly that nowadays, not YouTube. Cheers, Caddis. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. So looking at the general discourse, and one of the negative things about this idea of free speech, when people keep talking about it and they switch their intelligence off, one of the things they can do is they might fall into certain traps, like thinking, in general discourse, particularly on X with the spaces, people start getting this notion that all of our opinions are equal, which is back to, the whole Marxist thing that we're all equal. It makes people feel good. It avoids tensions, and also allows people to avoid the truth. I have no idea when my teeth look a bit yellow on camera. The lighting's crap in here, so I probably look like a car crash. But maybe we need to white paint or something. But in the general discourse, people might get the notion that our opinions have equal value. Now, this is actually problematic, and actually it links back into Marxism again, because Marxism, as I mentioned before, is against hierarchies. Right now, when we've seen recently the word equity has become a buzzword recently. We've seen it in the corporate world and so on, and this comes from Marxism, of course. It's the idea of forcing equality where it doesn't exist, right? Because Marxism again is against hierarchies, and the reason why it's against hierarchies is because it just has a tendency to destroy everything that's brilliant and beautiful about life and that's efficient, but mostly because in a hierarchy, someone's going to be in the lower position, and therefore they're probably being oppressed. So Marxism is against hierarchies for that reason. And as I often talk about, people are a lot more brainwashed with Marxism than they think. You don't have to be talking about a workers' revolution or to believe in outright communism to be a Marxist and to be brainwashed with this shit. And I even hear it in people's attitudes on online discourses. And the reason why it's a bad thing is because people get the notion, this equity, this notion of equality comes into the picture. And the reason why it's bad is because you start having one person can have a very high quality intelligent opinion, and they start getting regarded the same as someone on this level of intelligence. We're not all equal. And when it comes to general discourse and problem solving in Ireland, like in anywhere else, if you have people of a lower level of skill and knowledge being treated the same as someone who's got a high level of skill and knowledge, that's not a good thing for general discourse. Now, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If it's just an X space or a general discussion space or something like that, well, it doesn't really matter. It's for entertainment purposes. There's also an element of catharsis to it as well, where people want to talk to, get things off their chest and to, whatever, just express their opinions and so on, right? So that's fine. But you're actually trying to solve problems, and you're trying to get things done as a collective. The idea of equity in terms of people's opinions is terrible. That's a terrible notion. In fact, that's exactly how equity works. Equity tends to cause havoc and destruction. Why? Because you don't allow the quality to rise to the top. You don't allow the quality people, quality opinions to push out in front and take the lead and set a good example. That starts to happen when you have this notion of equality drumming into the picture. And this can happen by accident without people even really knowing that they're doing it. And I noticed that tendency myself. So that's one of the dangers, one of the pitfalls of general discourse and groups when they're trying to solve problems. You need to have a command structure. You need to have people, there needs to be enough consensus to follow the most intelligent in the group and allow them to be the ones to solve the problems. Because I see that constantly, even despite the amount of information flying around the place and the amount of people who want things to change and improve and enthusiasm and drive and so on, you'll still get an awful lot of people in the mix in Ireland, like in anywhere else, talking. They don't understand what they're talking about. Their conclusions are all over the place and they're not really helping. And there's obviously lots and lots of different levels of that as well. It's not like as simple as this group isn't so good, this group is neutral, and this group over here is superior in terms of their opinions and their analysis. Reality doesn't work that way. There's obviously lots of different combinations. That's one of the things I'm seeing. And also as well on the kind of free speech thing as well, there's a big difference. Again, the reason why we've been talking about free speech in recent years, because of what globalism is doing and so on, is because we have these internationalist nut jobs. Now, some people want to go off the deep end and talk about the Jews, the bankers and the capitalists and all this stuff, but it's really just international communism. That's what's really going on. And these communist types, these people with a communist mindset, and that includes people like your George Soros types as well, even Bill Gates, these are all internationalists in their outlook, which comes from Marxism. These types have controlling tendencies, and part of that is to control people's free speech and to control their opinions. And they're doing it for nefarious reasons, obviously, because they want to control the narrative, and they have that spoiled brat thing as part of their personality. And they don't want anyone to express views that go against that. Your Keir Starmer types and all, includes the Irish fly bastard, the communist fly. These people have controlling tendencies, and that's why we're all talking about free speech in the last few years, particularly, right? So that's obviously an example of someone controlling speech in a nefarious way. What I recommend going forward with Marxism is that we have are people who are pushing any sort of toxic ideas, that we don't necessarily have to ban people and so on, but we have to learn to acknowledge that all opinions are not equal value. Someone pushing National Socialism or going on about the Jews or pushing Marxism of any kind, all these people are part of the problem, and they're destructive for countries. People as well being too obsessed with the idea of what people colloquially refer to as ethno-nationalism, and things like this can be destructive and divisive. And we need to start looking at those stances as being unconstructive and inferior. So I just want to put that on the table. Again, I'm not against free speech, but we have to give ideas. We shouldn't allow Marxism to creep into that concept and start trying to convince us all that all opinions have equal value. And that, because of free speech. No, they don't. We should never switch our intelligence off and just repeat things like parrots. We should always stay engaged and, treat things and people how they deserve to be treated. And when it comes to, say, I talked about this recently with what happened with the US and with Ireland and the Israeli embassy withdrawing from Ireland. I mentioned this in the last video that there are ramifications for Ireland going forward, and obviously you have the Marxists in Ireland talking about Palestine, and they'll insist that we stay sympathetic to Palestine, even though there's no benefit to us to doing that. So there's no benefit to it, but there is some drawbacks, and that is we're actively alienating people, or countries who should ordinarily be allies, including Western countries, and that's not a good thing. So we need to keep that in mind. And a lot of people, I mentioned in the last video as well, people being very proud about the idea that we are have Palestine's back because of solidarity. We're with the oppressed, as if that's a good thing, but it's not a good thing, and there are going to be ramifications towards that as well. What else was I going to say here? I'm just looking at my old notes here. Thanks for joining me. Anyone who joined late, anyone listening on X, if you wouldn't mind reposting this, like a quote post is good rather than just a repost. If you do a quote repost is good to try and generate a bit more views. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think I was coming through earlier on the mic, but I'm recording this as usual. I'll send out some clips later. And I'll probably just go for an hour and a half. If someone wants to drop any suggestions in the YouTube comments, anything you want me to bring up or anything tangent you want me to go into, just let me know. But I've got my little running order here anyway. And I'd appreciate a sub as well, anyone on YouTube. I don't really pay attention to YouTube so much nowadays. So that's what I wanted to mention about the whole free speech. There's a big difference between sometimes people using suppressing people's free speech if they're deliberately engaging in toxic behaviors, or someone else doing it for more nefarious reasons. Not all types of control are the same. So I hope that actually tying into what happened with Musk and so on, I'm thinking that the way things are going with Musk and Trump and so on, hopefully for our sake in Ireland and elsewhere, what they'll do is they'll start to put pressure on countries and regimes who don't, who are like the UK regime with Starmer and so on. Hopefully they're going to start using Americans are going to use their political power and their weight and their strength to start to help other countries who are in trouble. That's one of the things I really hope that they're going to do. So that's why I welcome Musk sticking his oar in, talking about what happened with Keir Starmer and going after him. I mean, Keir Starmer is a sociopath. He is a Fabian. He's a member of all Labour Party leaders and deputy leaders and all the big Labour Party members going back to World War II, and Clement Attlee in particular. From Clement Attlee forward, who was the first Prime Minister after Winston Churchill, from that point forward, all of the Labour Party leaders and Prime Ministers have been Fabian socialists, including Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, now Starmer. The Fabians are a bunch of British subversive socialists is the best way to describe them. They believe in having a communist utopia, but by using sneaky means, by using the education system, culture, the media, and so on, to slowly turn society towards communism. And that's why Britain is now collapsing, imploding, because of what the Fabians did. The Fabians were instrumental in dismantling the British Empire, if you can believe that. Because it obviously was an obstacle to communism. So Starmer is a Fabian. Now the UK was going down the toilet anyway before Fabian Starmer came along. But it's interesting that once he came into the picture, it started to really go down the toilet. So I know some people have their questions about Musk and so on. That ties in with the Jew trapper stuff. They'll say that, well, Trump he's in with the Jews, and they kind of can't really trust Musk and see what he's doing. And they'll also have just enough doubt in their minds to not notice the great work that he's doing. So, I mean, what's the other explanation for him going after Starmer? That it's a conspiracy. So we're back to the tinfoil hat stuff again. No, I think that Musk is, from what I can tell, is a good man, and he's going after Starmer for good reason. So I'll move on there. Thanks for joining me. Anybody joining late on X or YouTube, going out live on X and YouTube. Was supposed to be going out on Rumble, but couldn't get that sorted, unfortunately. Anyone watching on YouTube, feel free to drop in a comment. Anyone listening on X or watching on X, quote repost that just to get more views on this. This is like a last minute thing as usual, and I kind of had one going earlier and then stopped it for tech reasons. So I was just testing out stuff. So not too fussed about the live viewers. So I'm going to chop it up later in editing and send out clips as usual. Something one of the things I caught on, I'm just going to talk about some of the different attitudes going around, particularly on the Irish scene, because it does matter. It does matter what people, the stances people are taking, where they stand on things matter, because we're all part of a collective. And so, if you have people's, like I always talk about the chameleon with the eyes going in different directions at once. So I'm looking over there and that one's looking down here. People are going all these different directions, prioritizing different things. It's not good. You need to have more of a consensus. So these are some of the different attitudes I've kind of noticed on the Irish scene. One of them is the idea of people, kind of, where's the fight? Where's the fight in people? Where's the drive? People are getting really frustrated and they want to see change. And, when that happens, and I've talked about this before, when you're not organized properly and you're not ideologically in a good place and you're not efficient, people get frustrated because they want things to change, but everything's staying the same. And sometimes people read, they think of a violent idea. They say politics is no good, we have to get violent, or they'll say we need political solution now, and people get frustrated and they start pointing the finger at other people and blaming them and so on. That I can understand that, but it's not really going to work. It's not going to work that way. Because people say, where's all the fighters? Where's the fighting Irish? Where's all that? The problem with that is, how is that going to work? And I've kind of been frustrated myself before in the past, and I've talked about that. People taking direct action and getting more aggressive and so on. The problem is, with the level of consciousness not so high, which it is at the moment in Ireland, and I don't know if that can be changed, the level of understanding, consciousness, the level of understanding of what's happening and what must be done, and that we're fighting against international globalism here. If you don't have enough understanding of that in enough numbers, which we don't have at the moment in Ireland, it's a little bit futile trying to push for a quick knockout or some sort of an immediate solution, and that's why people are getting impatient. They want the quicker solution. They don't want this to be drawn out and the clock is kind of ticking demographically and so on. As I've been saying for a while, you can't actually do that as things stand at the moment, because there's too many divisions within the movement. And I mentioned that in the last stream, that when you have these divisions within what you would call the nationalist movement or whatever, people going in different directions with different ideological solutions, if anyone tried to got frustrated and step forward as a group and try to do something physically, you're just going to get lifted by the state. It's not going to work. There's not enough people willing to take action in a large enough group on their own. I don't necessarily mean violent action. I'm talking about having a huge united movement, as I've said before, where you approach the state with a massive movement, with tens and tens and thousands of people, and try to, win in a confrontation with the state. And I don't mean an actual violent confrontation. I just mean a kind of an ultimatum, and say, look, that we've got tens and tens of thousands of people as part of this movement. It's time for you to step down. And they would step down. It's been done before, but we can't get to that level of strength as a group because of the divisions within the movement. So that's why I've been made this a top priority recently. So people might think, well, why is he talking about the Jew trapper thing? Why is he talking about National Socialism? Why does he keep talking about Marxism? Why is he trying to get people to look at the ethno-nationalism thing a little bit differently and stop being so rigid with it? Why? The reason why I'm talking about those things is because those things allow there to be division within the movement, and if you have division within the movement, you can't develop a big strong group, and if you don't have that big strong group, you can't produce results. So that's why people talking about, where's all the fighters, why can't we turn things around, where's all the real men and all this stuff? You're wasting your time. It's not going to happen that way unless you sort out the skeletons in the closet, the issues that are in Ireland, and before you could possibly reach that. Again, I'm not saying this could be done, but I'm saying this has to be done first. You have to sort out all the issues and sort out the ideological makeup of the country first and get everyone on the same page. Otherwise, stuff like that is just not an option. so people can get as frustrated as they want, as I've been saying for years now. And, since last May, when I start promoting the book, you have to sort out the ideological problem first, like a healthy form of nationalism that's not extreme, that's just about protecting culture and so on, and that has, other elements to it as well, like, liberal economic policies that's against globalism, that wants to either drastically alter a relationship with the European Union or get out of the European Union. Those kind of, common sense ideas, and dismantling all the different Marxist initiatives and structures, like, start to change our relationship, the whole welfare state culture in Ireland, dismantling all of the different, the NGO complex, which just drains money from the economy, the Marxist NGO complex. There's loads of things you can do. Those things should be part of the package within a nationalistic movement, and people need to come on board with those things and just keep it sensible. Part of the problem, again, linked to I was talking about earlier with the whole free speech thing, is that people feel so proud when they say, well, I've got my opinions and you've got yours. They feel that that's so clever, but it's actually not. When you're trying to build consensus and you're trying to build a big, strong movement, if you have thousands of people involved and they've all got different ideas about how it's going to happen, it's never going to happen. You're never going to produce results or get anything done like that. So a lot of this stuff breaks down to psychology in the end, and I don't mean in a conventional sense. I mean, a practical, everyday, common sense way of looking at things in order to produce results. That's really what it's all about. So, so there's plenty of confidence, within Ireland. There's plenty of confidence, there's plenty of passion, there's plenty of impatience and drive and so on. But the one thing it's lacking is that efficiency and professionalism, which I did mention before, that's sorely lacking, to really push things onto a higher level. Like any machine or any group or organization is something you can tweak. You can always tweak a little bit more, performance out of an engine or a system or a company or whatever it is, and that's what we have to focus on this year, I believe. By the way, I don't know if anyone noticed, I'm kind of holding back a little bit with the noise. I don't know, it just feels like a really quiet place I'm in at the moment. I'm not really ranting the way I normally rant, but maybe think the caffeine is wearing off as well slightly, because that always happens to me. I have this great idea about doing a stream, and I'm like, this is going to be fucking deadly, yeah, and then the caffeine starts to wear off and I start to dribble onto the microphone. Thanks for joining me. If anyone's joining later, anyone is joining on X, if you're joining on X or YouTube, if you're on X, please do repost this stream if you don't mind, to get some more eyes on the project. And if you're listening on YouTube, fire us in a comment there, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Actually, you need to be a sub to do that. Yeah, I just sorted that out. What else? So something else I want to talk about. This drives me mental, because if you know my work and you know what I've been kind of working on the last few years, it really all boils down to international communism. That's all that matters, right? So communism is globalism. That's what we're all up against. It's about global control, and everything else we've been dealing with is all just aspects of that movement. The rest is just all, the details and semantics and so on. Unfortunately, not a lot of people can see that, but that's really what it's all about. And it's really frustrating listening to people discuss these things, because often people reach for the conspiratorial brain. They feel that the explanations for things have to be really complex, and they can't take the more straightforward explanation sometimes, and that's not a good thing. So say, for example, the climate change movement, I noticed that being discussed recently. Like, say, the Irish government was saying there's going to be this horrible snow situation, it was going to be a nightmare, and people were fleecing the shops for all these provisions and so on. There's going to be a bit of a nightmare. And obviously when you think of the whole the climate change scam and the climate agenda, they will say that the world's going to end, we need to be careful and blah blah blah, and they're always trying to generate this fear, and so on. I was listening to a space earlier on X. People were talking about the climate change movement. I don't think anyone mentioned that it was a communist agenda. You know, people were just saying that it was you know, people think about the elites and we say they are controlling us, and I think they go off the deep end and start thinking that it's you know, that it's these international bankers or your Bill Gates types and so on, which is kind of getting close to the mark. But it is a communist agenda. You know, it was particularly created in 1968 by the Club of Rome. Aurelio Pecci and Alexander King were two Marxist cult members, and they used the whole scared that the planet is going to end if you don't start recycling and so on. It's based on the oppressor versus oppressed formula. The planet's oppressed, we are the oppressors, and so on. And you know, that's when people think of, say, HARP, you know, the weather control technologies, they assume that it's almost like a supernatural explanation for it. It's these shadowy elites, but it's just a communist agenda. And unfortunately, this conspiratorial mindset is really bad, and it ties into, because people don't look for the simple, straightforward explanation. It always has to be something alternative or unusual. Another example is anything tying in with the Jew trapper stuff as well. Say what Musk is concerned, they assume there's some sort of conspiracy that Musk is trying to take us all to Mars, and maybe he is an alien himself. You know, he's in with the Jews, and there's some sort of alternative explanation for why things are happening. But usually the more straightforward one is the correct one. The whole Occam's razor thing. But interestingly, when it comes to like Marxism, I've found before that people find it again hard to accept the easier explanation. So they'll go off the deep end and think that it was some sort of conspiratorial, this dark agenda going on in the world, and everything has a fancy explanation. But when I say to them that, well, communism is a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy to control the world. It's very, very old, and you know, you can find it in their texts. Yeah, you can go back as far as Marx and Engels with the Communist Manifesto. It's a very internationalist slant, but particularly the Fabian Society, established in 1884, they really set out their stall as being conspiratorial commies. And so it's very, very old, yet people find this hard to believe, you know. Or say even the COVID thing, people go on about the elites doing COVID, but we know that the Chinese Communist Party was involved, and it came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The Chinese have already said, and you know, in their kind of rhetoric, that they want to be the dominant power in the world in this century, right? They want to be the dominant power in the world by 2049, which is the 100-year anniversary of the People's Republic of China. You know, they're literally telling us, you know. So where are we now? I can't count that high. 25, 14, 10. So you carry the one, I don't fucking know. No, 24 years from now. Yep, China wants to be the world power in 24 years, right? So, and they were involved in the whole COVID situation. And this is typical of the commies work. They love to get you talking conspiracies or weird stuff or alternative explanations, because it gets them off the hook. And while we're on that subject, on the whole Jew trapper thing, I actually sent my Jew trapper video I put out recently, one of my little social experiment videos. I put that out and I got some interesting responses, and I sent it to this guy called Jeff Nyquist, who's an expert. He's been in the game much longer than me doing this sort of thing. He's a veteran talking about international communism, and he's a really, really good researcher. And I sent him my video, and we were talking about that the communist movement co-opted the whole anti-Semitic stuff. They used it to help themselves, because the more people are going on about Jews, the less they're going on about communism. Now, obviously, people are brainwashed into the Jew trap, obsessed with Jews. They think the Jews are behind everything. They think that the Jews create communism, which isn't true. And they also think that they're the ones pushing it across the world today, which isn't true either. As I said, mathematically speaking, the vast majority of people pushing this globalist totalitarian on us in Ireland and elsewhere are not Jewish, you know. So it's a population like 2,700 Jews in Ireland, or something like that, less than 3,000, with a population of 5.38 million in the Republic, and people think it's the Jews. You know, this kind of stupidity comes from indoctrination is the only way to explain that kind of stupidity. And the conspiratorial brain, you know, because the Jews have magic powers. So there's only 3,000 of them, but they're all, you know, in their houses, waving a magic wand, doing their Jew magic, right? Not black magic, Jew magic, to control people in the Irish government. So it just gets ridiculous really fast. But tying into what I was saying earlier about people find it hard to accept that communism is a conspiracy to rule the world, it was pointed out to me recently that after Israel was formed, the Soviets pretty quickly tried to bring Israel into their control, into the orbit of the USSR and the Soviet Union, the commie control system. But the Israelis allied with the West, and since then the commies have been doing their thing. Whenever they paint someone as a target and you're the enemy, they use demoralization, conspiracy, propaganda to turn you into an enemy. And that's what I believe they've done. So this ties into my work directly. Why is everybody, a lot of people in Western countries, talking about the Jews? Because communism is very good at deflecting blame away from itself. And of course, you're going to find people involved with pushing communism in the world and global totalitarian control who are Jewish. But you can say the same about every other group. But again, and bear with me here, people who know my work, I've talked about this before, that when the commies want to attack an enemy group, they use a very clever tactic where they'll take some of the data, they'll cherry pick some of the information and exaggerate it. So for example, the feminist movement have managed to brainwash a lot of females in the world, unfortunately, to think that every man's a potential rapist, right? Because some men commit rape, and what they do is they take those instances and exaggerate it, make it seem like it's going on all the time, till eventually certain females might be brainwashed and thinking they can't leave their house because every man's going to jump on them, which is a distortion of the truth. Men who engage in rape are sociopaths. And sociopaths make up a very small portion of the population. They could be sociopathic because of their religious beliefs or their upbringing or whatever it is, but committing the act makes you a sociopath by definition, right? So you see what I'm saying? They're very good at using attacking a group by taking some of its characteristics and exaggerating it and blowing it out of proportion. And they've done the same thing with the Jews. The communist movement has done the same thing with the Jews. You're going to find some Jews who engage in negative behavior just like any other group, and what they've done is they put that up on a pedestal and target it and so on. And remember, this really helps and their ambitions in the Middle East, because as I've said for quite a while, I believe that Israel is a piece on the chessboard that the international communist movement would like to take, and it's in their interests to drum up as much hatred as possible for Israel and for the Jews to allow them to achieve their ends. And this ties into what happened recently in Ireland with the Israeli embassy withdrawing, because they felt, and it's true, that the Irish government is becoming quite sympathetic openly to the Palestinian cause and turning its back on Israel, which is shows them kind of where they're setting out their stall. So I hope anyone's listening, if you want me to kind of more detail in any of those bits and pieces, I might be jumping from one thing to the next too much. Anyone joining late, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Make sure you repost and comment and all that crack. So anyway, I'll get back to my little running order here. One of the problems I deal with quite a lot trying to educate people about this very serious issue, and it ties into the Jew stuff as well, is that people think, say for argument's sake it was true that communism comes from the Jews, right? And they're the ones who created this ideology and they're to blame for it. What they're trying to say is it's more important to talk about where Marxism comes from than it is to talk about who's pushing the ideology in the present. Now that's a mistake, because there's no point sitting here talking about what Marx thought, or what Trotsky thought, or what Lenin thought, or what Rousseau thought, or the people before Marx. These are all dead people, right? Imagine I spent my time talking about all that without talking about the person beside me, like the woman lives next door who's a feminist, or the man down the hall who's worried about climate change, or the person I work for who thinks it's very important that we stop racism in the world. You know what I mean? You see what I'm getting at? Like, you're not actually dealing with the problems in front of you and the people around you within your society. So stay with me here. Looking at Ireland in that case, these Jew trappers think they're so clever. People obsessed with the Jews think we should talk about even if they were true, that it comes from the Jews. They think in Ireland it's more sensible today, when I'm trying to raise awareness about Marxism in the present and to get us to talk about, analyze people around us to see if they're contaminated. They think it's more important to talk about their belief that it comes from the Jews. That's really, really stupid, particularly in Ireland or countries like Spain or Iceland. You've got pretty much zero population of Jewish people. Iceland is one of the most lefty countries in Europe. It's absolutely destroyed with Marxism, and there's no Jews there. So it's a logical fallacy for people to think that that's going to help. It's not going to help. And I find it's hilarious. I deal with this quite a lot. The arrogance of the people who try to challenge me all the time. I'm the one who wrote a book about this, and I've been contemplating and analysing this for years, and they think they know better than me what we should be talking about and how we should approach the subject. Brats. Really, they're just brats. Connected in with the conspiratorial mindset, something else I wanted to mention is the whole spiritual types, right? So this is something I had a conversation with someone recently about this, about tied into conspiratorial thinking. I actually put this in a short video I made ages ago, that people having these unconstructive mindsets, right? So another one is people with spiritual beliefs. There are some people going around like that, and you do hear them popping up sometime in social discourses. So people who have spiritual beliefs, this is people who have these notions about reality, about life, about what they should be focusing on. And really, they're just hedonists. And I've dealt with this a lot. So when I use terms about consciousness or understanding or being switched on to things, and I use the term consciousness, some people contaminated with spiritual beliefs think that being a really intelligent person is about being, positive about life all the time and try to find new ways of feeling happy and to elevate your understanding. But that involves, not looking at any of the dark agendas in life, or any of the negative parts of life, or some of the chaos that's happening in the world right now. That's not true, actually, because when you end up being ignorant, and some of the most ignorant people I've met are people detached from reality, are people who have too much of a sunny disposition, who think that life is all about happiness and you need to try to feel good all the time. They end up really detached from reality. They end up being, because when you think of, like, say, the yin-yang symbol from, the Eastern philosophies, the yin-yang symbol, the circle, it's black and white and one on each half. The positive and the negative, the black and the white, the good and the evil, etc. They both have their roles to play, and people who have this spiritually new age approach to things feel that they're being really clever and they're helping, but it's actually terrible. They end up being super, super ignorant. Now, when I'm saying spiritual types, I also mean people who are overly emotional or optimistic or whatever about how reality works. They don't have to call themselves spiritual types, but they can have these tendencies in their personality, and that's a bad thing. And again, I see people like this contributing towards discourse, and they think that that's a good idea, but it isn't. These people need to be called out for doing that, because they're just deliberately ignoring half of reality by taking that sunny disposition all the time. And because you can't learn. The truth about what's happening to Ireland and to other countries at the moment is not pleasant. And that's another thing we have to address. So people might say, why am I talking about this? How on earth does this tie in with what's happened in Ireland, current affairs? Well, think about it. There's a big section of the population who are not engaged politically, right? So there are some people engaged, like I said last day, some people are engaged, but they're engaged on the pro-globalist side. The state, the political left, etc., are all tied in and working together. There's people over that side who are, engaged in the anti-globalist stance, call it nationalist, whatever you want, freedom advocates. And there's people in the middle of the population who aren't engaging for whatever reason. And within that category, there are people who are conspiratorial brains, spiritual types, people are apathetic, apolitical. We need to try to resolve that if we can, I think, and pull people away from this silly kind of thinking. So conspiratorial mindset, spiritual types, these are all
not only are they not helpful, they're actually destructive, because, as Yuri Bezmenov said once, this great man who's a Soviet defector once said, in this world, if you're a neutral, you're an enemy, because of what we're dealing with, because we're up against international communism. People with their head in the clouds with these different silly beliefs are actually part of the problem, And that brings me to the other point I mentioned before as well about people taking responsibility for what's happened in their own countries. The reason why Ireland is in the struggle it's in is because the collective intelligence and attitude of the people within the population have all these different types of issues, many of them that I listed. That's why Ireland is being collapsing. And if you have a population of people who are collectively with the wrong attitudes, and including all the ones I've mentioned, then the collective will suffer. And that's why it's important to kind of mention these things. So just kind of tonight, just riffing about a few different things, folks. If anyone joined in late, I just wanted to make myself do a stream. Nothing really serious to talk about, just riffing about a few different things. Thanks recently for all the reposts and so on my different little videos, my little different social experiments. I did a few of them. One of them was about people being stuck in the Jew trap, being obsessed with the Jews. That drew out quite a few interesting responses. There's another one as well about Irish republicanism, how that movement's contaminated with Marxism too. Another one of the issues in Ireland, people who think that they're helping the country, but they're actually feeding back into the monster that's actually destroying us. And some other short videos went out there as well. But this is just the first one back on the horse, pretty much. I have to really get another screen so I can get set up properly here. And some lights. My God, I've got this shitty little light in the corner. But anyone listening on YouTube there, drop us in a comment if there's anything you want to ask me, or you want me to just kind of riff on something nice and easy going for tonight. To be honest, the last few things that I did, you almost hear it in my voice, the last few things that I did, I kind of covered all the major stuff that I needed to say. But so tonight is just other like bits and pieces. But I kind of never really bothered like getting into the live streaming thing, just because like I used to see some of the streams on the scene in Ireland going back. They used to go on for hours, and I thought, my God, I'd never be able to talk like that long. There's not how much do you need to say? Like 4-hour live stream. I'll start reading out my shopping list soon. When you start scraping the barrel. But so the plan going forward then is I've probably I'll see about, now that I'm back in the country, I'll see about doing interviews and stuff. I might get back on the horse with that, because I used to enjoy that. I mean, the thing with me, people doing interviews sometimes, they like to kind of wing it and to just kind of, like haphazard, more amateurish kind of interviews. But the way I roll, I always try to do them professionally, which means I would do some research on the guests and make sure that I'm well prepared, and that takes energy. And the lazy part of my personality will go, fuck it, I won't bother doing that. So that's why I kind of stopped when I came back to the scene last year. But anyone listening in the back, or anyone who just joined, I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, watch my presentation at the University of Dallas. It's my pinned tweet on my X profile, and it's also here on YouTube as well. There's two versions. One of them has the Q&A, and the other one is just the presentation itself, which is about 45 minutes long. But I highly recommend that. Really, a few people have contacted me recently, and they say we're having like different private chats with people. And once they get stuck into Marxism, you start to see more of it in the discourse, because they have a bit more knowledge. And I like when that happens. It shows that people have been paying attention. It really is like the major problem in Western countries. So everything we're dealing with at that moment in Ireland, like the continuing discussion about what's happening with Israel and the embassy, as well as the immigration stuff as usual, what's happening in the Middle East, and then the war with Russia, what's happened with the States, Marxism is the driving antagonist behind all of that. And it's very frustrating doing what I do, because a lot of people still can't see it. It really is the major problem in the background. The reason why the Americans were pushed to have the election result recently in the States was because of what the Marxists did to the country. Like what Kamala Harris, Biden, and then further back Obama did. These are all Marxists, different stripes, the anti-Americans. And we're dealing with the same thing in Ireland. You're looking at people like McEntee, O'Gorman. Anyone with an internationalist brain is a Marxist, right? They're all the same. They're just very good at hiding their intentions and hiding what they are, which kind of is part of the problem. And as I mentioned loads of times, the solution to all that is to have a healthy nationalistic stance. So globalism is the idea of making all countries member states of the world and a socialist federation of the world. Nationalism is the idea of countries being sovereign and separate, where they get to decide how they manage their own border, and what should happen to their culture, how they process the economy and so on, how they organize that, their diplomatic and economic relations to other entities, whether or not you're part of conglomerate organizations like the UN and the European Union and so on. That all ties back into the same thing. If you have a healthy country where nationalism is the ideology, you wouldn't be in those situations in the first place. But if you got into them, you could get out a lot easier, because you're ideologically healthy. And the COVID thing, which again is, I don't really have an awful lot to say about COVID, because again, it's just a symptom of the problem. You're part of an international community, you're a member state of the globalist system. That's what happens. You end up being dragged into these agendas. Again, that was the Chinese were involved with that one. And I find it very frustrating listening to people talk about COVID and the suppression and, not being, having any freedoms and being encouraged to take these vaccines. And literally we were forced into an inferior class. If you weren't willing to go along with this, you'd have your rights taken away, like the right to travel, the right to work and open a business and so on. It's very frustrating listening to people talk about that without talking about Marxism. Very frustrating because the Chinese Communist Party were directly involved, and also, like I was saying, it wouldn't have happened if we weren't part of the international community and kind of wired into it the way we are. And the reason why that's the case is because Marxism is part of the furniture in Ireland, and it's eroded our sovereignty and destroyed our nation and so on. So I find it very frustrating people talking about COVID without mentioning or being aware that it's part of the international communist system. Some of it is because people just don't know. But that's why if you look at the cover of my book, Red Pandemic, The Global Marxist Cult, I've got a syringe on the front of the book which represents two things. One, the whole COVID agenda, and second of all, the fact that the political left love to legalize drugs and push degeneracy and so on. So the syringe is one of the many symbols to represent what their movement does. I'm going to wrap it up here, folks. Shortly, I'm going to grab myself some dinner. I'm still struggling to get used to the damn cold here. I'm still, my body still thinks, I was in Dallas first, then I ended up being in Spain. Dallas was still warm, like nice sunny days in November, the end of November. And Spain wasn't too bad either, and then I came back here and it was real kicking balls. So I'm still kind of getting used to it. I'm wearing two pairs of socks right now, and I still can't feel my fucking feet. So I'm going to wrap up here shortly, folks. Thanks for joining me. I'll probably clip out some of these bits, but people are welcome to send me a DM on X or emails occasionally nowadays. I'll check that sometimes, but yeah, DM on X, whatever. And I will see you folks shortly in the next one. Probably do a live stream once a week or something like that, just to stay on top of things. And I'm sure a lot will happen between now and next week. I'll have a bit more of a dynamic kind of running order. Just a few little things I wanted to mention tonight. But anyway, thank you very much, folks, for watching, and I will see you in the next one.